Well, welcome all. There's been numerous occasions when people have inquired about the way I put my rig together, the little small one, what components I've used and so on. So I thought I'd put together a short video just describing the components that I've used and how it's all come together for any information purposes for those who have been interested in it over a period of time. I haven't really gone into a great amount of detail in how it's been put together. I've talked about it, but left out all the I guess the subtle bits that have gone into making this new rig of mine. And so what I'll do is I'll just go through the bits and pieces of it one by one, and what I've done is I've just set it up as a vertical shot, and hopefully what I'm going to present is going to be fairly informative. This is the fully assembled version of my run and gun rig, and what I'll do now is I'll just break it down into its major components, and then I'll just go through and describe each bit, why I use it and how it all comes together into a complete unit. This is how it looks when it's been mostly broken down. I'm not going to break it down all the way down to the lens itself and the adapter. I just don't want to break those apart, and I'll explain shortly why. But basically I use a Olympus 14 to 35 f2 lens on this. It's the old 4/3 lens, attached with a 4/3 to micro 4/3 adapter, and I find that this lens is really one excellent product with this camera. At the front of the lens I've got an SLR Magic Image Enhancer filter that takes away some of the UV and IR, and also enhances the image to some degree. And attached to that is a KNF Concept variable ND filter. I prefer the variable NDs over fixed filters, even though I have some, just simply for the ease of use, speed and general cost, because individual NDs start adding up if you're going to be buying a handful of those. Plus it's just a pain to store that many filters and have them with you as well as if you're running and gunning somewhere. So VNDs are quite useful. I don't believe personally that the image degrades that much to be concerned about it, as long as you buy a good quality variable ND. So I'll take these things aside, and then I'll just go and explain each part as I go along. First off, I'll start with the underside of the camera, and as you can see, I've got a 200mm Arca Swiss plate there. All my gear uses Arca Swiss plates. I find them far more versatile and useful than Manfrotto. You can get these from 1 inch or even shorter, up to 300mm long. So you can use them in all sorts of variable setups, and it just creates a degree of versatility that you can't get, in my view, with Manfrotto. I have these on all my gear, and with this unit, for example, it's really easy to just go from this handheld setup to a gimbal, tripod or slider or whatever, monopod, you name it, because of the flexibility of the Arca Swiss plate. And with the longer rails, you can actually even use it as a bit of a slider to adjust your setting and so on. What I've got at the front of the mount is a lens support, and I use that basically because otherwise the weight of the lens would be clearly too much for the mount itself. But to add to that, what I've done is I've got a zip tie attached to the front of the lens, connecting to the lens support, and that just makes this whole unit into one solid component. I've had this fall off a chair in my study, and absolutely no damage has occurred to it whatsoever. So I think that is good, and especially because I go around in the bush with this thing bouncing on my front seat of my vehicle and all that, it just stops any damage occurring. Now, going from the top, what you can see is an Andover MPF battery plate adapter. These are available in different brands, from Tiltar, Small Rig, and any other no-name brands and so on. I prefer the Andover one. I've had this for a long time, and it's been working very, very well. The fact that it's got a fixed cable on there is something I prefer to the plug-in types. It's just one less thing that could come out and cause issues. So I like that design, and it allows me to sort of use the cable just the way that I want it. The batteries that I use are the IDX versions. They are fairly expensive. but I found them to be the most reliable and most powerful batteries in this particular range. I've tried a various range of less expensive ones and haven't been really all that happy with them, so I've stuck with the IDX as far as the main power source for the camera. But I also have a Canon, genuine Canon LPE6N inside the camera to act as an UPS when I change batteries if I need to. On the other side of the camera, I've got a small rig Samsung SSD mount, and I use the Samsung T5 SSDs, in particular the 1 terabyte ones, because of the quality that I generally tend to shoot at. So the mount, or the monitor that I use, is a Blackmagic 12G HDR 5-inch. I've tried various other monitors, FeelWorld and Atomos, and I haven't been happy with them. The FeelWorld 7-inch ultra bright monitor is quite good, but it's way too large for this setup, and that's permanently mounted on my other rig. This particular monitor is, my view, outstanding, well worth the money. It is expensive, but nothing sort of comes close to it in my view as far as general brightness and so forth goes, so I really do like it. I've got two MPF batteries, generic ones, sitting on the back of it, the 550s. I'm not so fussed about using generic batteries when it comes to devices like this, because they just get swapped in and out all the time. So these things are, I think, the DSTE ones, which work reasonably well and aren't too expensive and readily available. On the bottom of the monitor, I've got a NATO rail, which I modified slightly. It holds the monitor quite well now, and I'll just attach it shortly, but I've also done a slight cutout into the NATO rail so that I can easily attach the USB 2 or USB-C cable in and out without having to remove the monitor if I don't want to, for updates and things like that. So that works quite well. With a normal mount, if you just use the center point screwed in, you can't access the USB-C connector without disconnecting the thing, and so it's a bit of a pain. This way it's quick and easy and no issues. And it just mounts like that, and I always seem to have trouble connecting the HDMI, probably because in this case it's actually quite firm. So that now sits in there quite nicely. Cable is virtually hidden there, and I'll explain a bit more about the cabling shortly. What I then have on the other side, and I'll just show that. You can see the cables that I've got. I've got a small rig HDMI and USB-C clamp there to hold those in place so they don't come out. And on the front there, I've just modified a 15mm bracket, cut it down from another little component that I used earlier on, which I used to attach the microphone itself. The microphone is a Rode Video Mic NTG, and I've also got a Rode Wireless Go transmitter attached underneath. The Rode Video Mic NTG is connected by a mini XLR cable into the camera, and there's a dual adapter there so that the signal that the microphone picks up is transmitted to a Zoom F6 that I use. So I've got backup recording, and that actually, the Wireless Go goes to the Zoom as 32-bit, so it gives me quite a bit of versatility for audio. That is attached to another butchered 15mm rail and a bracket to hold the thing in place, and all I need to do to connect it, pretty solid, you can hear it bang away, just clamps in like that, plugs in like that, and it's in place. So that works really well. And the almost final component is a Tilter mini mat box. These are quite good in some respects. They're very lightweight, relatively small, and relatively well priced. However, there is a flaw that I've mentioned in the past, if you want to call it a flaw, that with wide-angle lenses, and if you've got filters attached to the lens itself, it will vignette. The 14mm, which is a 28mm full frame equivalent, does vignette, and even at around about the 18mm mark on this lens, which is 36mm full frame, you would get vignetting with the standard adapter ring. So I had to modify the adapter ring by grinding it down into a much thinner support so it just holds. It doesn't fall off or anything like that, but it's not quite as secure as it was originally. So it fits in there, it works quite well, so I've got no real major issues with it, but slightly better design might have been a bonus with this. And the final component is the handle, which is again a small rig handle with a Arca Swiss NATO clamp on the base of it, and that just then holds on. So that becomes a very small, lightweight run and gun rig that I've shown before packs into a very small bag with the microphone and everything else going into it. And when I pack it away, all I need to do is just fold the monitor down, put that down. I take off the handle, the microphone and the battery, which goes into a little packet. In fact, I take off the two 550s as well, so that actually folds down a lot flatter, and it packs away into a nice little bag. So as a run and gun rig, that works well. I've had absolutely no problems with it. As you can see, you can barely notice the cables in there because all the cables are tucked away, and especially, which I didn't mention yet, is that all the cables that I put on there, I've gone and sourced ones that are the appropriate length, or routed them in such a way that they're not going to be in the way. The cable going to the USB-C for the T5 is the one that comes with this T5, but that's just routed around, so it's out of the way and solidly mounted. The HDMI cable is one that I bought, which gave me just the right length to connect from the camera to the monitor, and the microphone wires are similar. It does take a bit of effort to find these cables, but they are available, so that's something to consider. And I really do think that cable management is fairly important, rather than having spaghetti dangling all over the place, ready to get caught wherever you happen to put the camera or move about. So that's it for the assembly, and I'll go on from there. Okay, well that's the description of my run and gun small rig. The big rig is very similar, except it uses a V-lock battery and a few other components, but this is my sort of go-to system, whether I want a handhold or gimbal or whatever, and it works extremely well for all of those particular requirements. So hopefully this has been informative, and look forward to seeing you again. Cheers.